So in Black Clover, we're shown Asta's journey towards becoming the Wizard King and all the obstacles he has to overcome to achieve that goal. Whether it's elves or devils, basically whatever gets in Asta's way, it's either solved with diplomacy or just straight hands. But the part that's always stood out to me the most, and I think goes under the radar for a lot of people when they read through Black Clover because it's kind of pitched at this very simple series, is that Asta is a weirdly well-written protagonist. Now I think the vehicle for Asta's intrigue as a character stems from the concept of his true dream. But to keep it simple, a true dream is basically the actual desire a character is seeking to fulfill through completion of a prior goal. So for example, Luffy wanting to become the Pirate King is his public goal, but his real, actual, true dream is that he wants to create a world where all of his friends never starve. So when we apply this true dream logic to Asta, we can see that to him, becoming the Wizard King helps him accomplish his true dream of boning a nun? I mean, hey, as far as main character motivations go, this one I can get behind. Okay, but for real though, I think the best way to summarize Asta's true dream is kind of like this. I think Asta wants to get rid of the inherent classism in the Clover Kingdom, a kingdom where one's magic ability is directly correlated to their position in the social hierarchy, meaning that for the people who have insanely high magic power, they're treated as royals, nobles, the very upper echelon of a society, whereas people with low magic power are treated as peasants, commoners, who barely have enough money and food to get by year to year. In fact, the very architectural makeup of the Clover Kingdom showcases this relationship beautifully. The very center of the Clover Kingdom is the castle in the main city. This is not only the wealthiest center of the Clover Kingdom, but also the one whose residents have the highest concentration of magic power. And basically, the further away you get from the capital directly correlates to your level of magic power, but also your position within the overall social pecking order. Now, I've always found this particular aspect of Black Clover's verse to be exceedingly interesting. Like, so interesting, in fact, that actually partially why I wanted to make this video in the first place. So between all this talk about geography and true dreams, you might be asking yourself, Kreams, what does any of this have to do with Asta being a socialist king? Well, okay, just bear with me a little longer. I promise we're almost there. Basically, when you combine all these little pieces of world building, you realize that Asta's vision for the Clover Kingdom, one of equality and abundant kindness, seems to almost inherently be a non-starter. That's not to say it's not an ideal worth fighting for, but rather, practical terms, the most Asta can really do to achieve his idealistic vision for the Clover Kingdom is address the underlying economic factors that shape the social attitudes of the Clover Kingdom's citizens. And honestly, that's really all he can do, because the nobles in Black Clover are literally just built different. The reason they become nobles to begin with is because of their insane mana, and time again, this relationship of noble blood being linked to the highest magic power is one that is constantly being reinforced in the story. And here are just two examples that I think demonstrate this beautifully. So number one is William Vengeance, the captain of the Golden Dawn. The guy uses one of the rarest and most busted magic abilities in the entire series with World Tree magic, and he's only able to do that despite being from low birth, because wouldn't you guess it, he's actually a noble, one who just happened to be an illegitimate son, but a noble nonetheless. So it's almost kind of funny to give him this origin as somebody who did grow up as like a peasant or live that lifestyle, but still give him royal blood in the sense of how else do you justify the monstrous amount of magic power this guy possesses. And the second example I think does this even more egregiously, also from the Golden Dawn, is none other than our boy Yuno, who I think is probably this concept embodied. For someone who is technically a commoner from the Forsaken Realm, Yuno has always been an odd specimen, not only because of his prodigious magic ability, but also because of how many times it's been stated that this dude is loved by Mana. And even being a host for one of the 4 great spirits, Tabata was like, not enough, let's give this dude a second grimoire with the absolutely broken star magic. Oh, and by the way, he's secretly been the lost prince of the Spade Kingdom this whole time. Dude, what? Look, I'm not saying this is necessarily a bad choice, but I do wonder why any of the nobles would have had changes of hearts when time and time again, it's their worldview that's constantly reinforced as the correct one. This would be like if a billionaire said that every working class person was just a lazy moron, and this is the reason they're poor, therefore it must only be the wealthy that are hard workers and thus deserve the wealth they acquire. And then he keeps being right! He keeps being proven right! But the craziest part about all of this is that he still has a change of heart. What the fuck is that? Is what I would have said before. See, I realized recently that this particular aspect of Black Clover, something that's always been a little weird to me, might have actually been intentional the entire time. And to Tabata's credit, I think this is something he's actively been reinforcing throughout the story, rather than just something he's doing as an afterthought. In fact, it's very consistently shown that what Asta is actually doing is changing the hearts and minds of those around him, but specifically when it comes to the class system. And I think this is also an aspect of Asta's character that goes way under the radar for a lot of people. I think that Asta, as a person with no magic, clearly understands the delta that nobles girls being born with better magic and more mana is just an objective fact of his world. It's not like he doesn't want to change it, it's that he can't. At the end of the day, Asta settles for making sure that at the very least, commoners don't just fucking starve to death. Because what else can he do? He can't inherently change the fact that some people are just loved by mana more than others. So the most that Asta can do is just make sure that these people have enough to eat and enough to live and just be treated with basic human dignity, because that is essentially what a king does. And I think this aspect of Asta, his diplomacy, his ingenuity, the fact that Asta at the end of the day just wants to build a better kingdom than the one he grew up in, without, you know, literally killing the king and just starting a revolution that way, but you know, that's a whole other video for a different day, is to me the epitome of why Asta is actually such a dope protagonist, because the fact that he understands almost implicitly the fact that there are hard limitations in his verse and that he can't just strength train his way out of it or just willpower his way into it or just talk no jutsu out of it. He essentially has to work around the limitations of his universe to come to the most optimal solution, and in this case, Asta's true dream is essentially to get rid of classism as we know it in the Clover Kingdom and to foster some level of peace throughout all the kingdoms more broadly. And I think it's one of the reasons Asta has always consistently been one of my favorite protagonists, and he's definitely one that I think has been getting overlooked like crazy when it comes to the who is the best MC debate. Now, I'm not saying Asta's my favorite MC, but I think people should honestly give him a fair shake, because Asta's definitely a much more layered protagonist and overall character than I think people give him credit for, and I just really wanted to put the spotlight on my boy Asta for a little bit. So the next time somebody says, why do you like Asta? He's so generic, link them in this video and tell them stay mad, L plus ratio, plus Asta better than Gut, plus like and subscribe, plus thanks for watching, plus see you later.